All right, UFC 220, Miocic versus Ngannou, and Stipe gets it done here, Kenny. 25 grueling minutes, mental toughness off the charts, and there are a lot of different ways you can go with this fight, but I am so impressed with Stipe and the understanding, Kenny, of what it takes to not only beat this type of challenger who can hit you with one of four knuckles, right? Barely touches you clean and he can concuss you, right? Just otherworldly power, but the understanding of what it takes to win a 5-round championship fight in mixed martial arts. And Stipe, from a conditioning standpoint, from a skill set standpoint, was prepared to do just that. In my opinion, Francis wasn't, and Stipe stamps his legacy as one of the greatest heavyweights we've ever seen.
Without a doubt. And as you go back into the heavyweight division, you know, if there's one division where you can get away with having a singular skill or one set of skills that is kind of far superior to everybody else, you could be successful in that division. You look at Randy Couture, who was primarily a wrestler. You look at Brock Lesnar, who pretty much was primarily a wrestler. Stipe Miocic has a variety of skills, as does Cain Velasquez. Both those guys can strike and wrestle as well. And, you know, for Francis Ngannou, you can't go in there with just one skill these days, you know, not against a modern mixed martial arts fighter like a Stipe Miocic. I was really happy to see Stipe fight smart and not just brawl. He picked and chose when he was going to stand in the pocket. Every single time he did do that, he was sure to get an angle. He seemed to be the quicker guy. He just shut down Francis Ngannou's offense from basically the second round all the way to the fifth. Francis just never had an answer for what Stipe was going to do or trying to do. Just amazing heart by the champ, Stipe Miocic. I was blown away by the performance. His chin, again, on full display, eating those shots, you know, some dangerous shots to the temple, some to the chin. Stipe was able to survive, and we knew that about Stipe. If you saw his fights against guys like Junior Dos Santos, you know, his fight against Mark Hunt, we knew he was going to show heart. I just liked his approach in that fight. That really was the difference, his strategy.
Now, a lot of people will say better to get Francis Ngannou now while he hasn't had the time to round into a primed mixed martial arts fighter, right? Some people are saying Ngannou's done, which I think is totally absurd. I think he's going to come back better, and I think you're going to see that this guy eventually does work his way back into, if not a heavyweight championship setting, certainly into an eliminator type fight to give him a chance against the elites. And I wouldn't be surprised to see Ngannou one day and become it. But for Stipe, Kenny, right, I just felt like every time there was a moment in this fight where he needed to do something, he did it, you know, whether it was go for the takedown at the right time or stay busy in the clinch to avoid a stand-up. I mean, Herb Dean only stood them up, Kenny, one time, and I think Stipe deserves a lot of credit for that. Now, it's easy for me to sit here on Monday morning and say, and this is my opinion, that with almost any other referee in there, I think you have a pretty good chance of saying that he would have at least twice stood them up, right? Because I did think there were some opportunities where Stipe maybe wasn't doing a ton, and there might have been an opportunity for a referee who either isn't as experienced or just was getting a little bit anxious because there wasn't so much action. I was surprised Herb only stood them up once, but I felt like every time he commanded Stipe to do more, Stipe did so right away, even though, you know, he was just totally exhausted.
I agree with both those things you said. I think if you look at other referees, maybe aside from Big John McCarthy, I think we would have seen a referee who would have stood them up. I agree. But I also agree when Herb Dean did ask for that action, Stipe was right there, throwing short shots, throwing hammer fists, staying busy, throwing knees to the body, and more importantly, not letting Francis get up, hanging heavy on that neck, hanging heavy on the back as well. Francis just didn't have an answer. He didn't have the ability to do that and do that efficiently. He was utilizing a lot of power, a lot of strength, which down the line just hurt him. I mean, I don't even know if he was even trying to throw anything. I don't know if he threw anything more than like 5 strikes in the fourth and fifth rounds.
Right. Francis Ngannou was not prepared to go in and win a 25-minute championship fight. And I think there is some criticism to be levied because of that. I know he was turning around quickly. I don't know why he went to Paris for 2.5 weeks. I don't know what led to that. I don't know if Fernand Lopez wanted that to happen to bring Francis back after what was a monumental win against Alistair Overeem back on December 2nd. But it was the wrong decision. All indications are he went straight from there to Boston. He was exhausted. There was a lot of promotion that resulted, right? He went to Boston, then had to get in the car and go to Bristol, Connecticut. Kenny, you know that drive pretty well. Nothing easy about it, right? Going there and back. And I just felt like when I sat down with Francis on Thursday, he was wearing it a little bit, Kenny.
Yeah.
And I just think this is a guy who's been pulled in a lot of different directions. And instead of staying at the UFC Performance Institute and working on his cardio and his grappling or anything else that might have helped him against Stipe, this guy was jet setting. And I'm not saying he was on vacation. He was still working hard. He was still training. But I think he paid for that decision, maybe even wasn't ready to fight Stipe, a guy on his level. I don't know, but disappointing.
No, those are all factors, dude. Those are all factors. Those are all things that fans don't realize, that when you're in a championship fight or when you're the champion, that's another reason why it makes it so difficult, is all the media obligations, all the things you got to deal with. That's why when you look back at what Conor McGregor did, especially in that fight against Chad Mendes, he was supposed to fight Aldo for that one, right? Then Aldo went out. He fought Mendes on last minute replacement. He was traveling all over the place, cutting weight down to 145 pounds. He did all those things and still pulled off the win. And he had like a torn, something in his knee. Right? So things like that, when you hear stories like that, when you hear stories about Max Holloway retaining his belt, again, against another guy like Jose Aldo after, traveling all around, doing all these media obligations, it is not easy. It is not easy. We all know when Ronda was the champ, how she said, people think they want the belt, but they really don't. They better be ready for a whole lot of responsibility. With all that said, based on what Francis Ngannou showed on Fight Night, skill-wise, just skill-wise, yeah, maybe he looked a little tired, but he's got to be better than that. That's not the reason he lost this fight. Stipe Miocic, just the more skillful fighter, which I knew heading into it. I just thought he was going to get caught early in the fight based on how he was fighting the last few fights. Was not the case. Stipe was smart to stay on the outside. As soon as he went in, he was taking Francis down, and Francis just did not have an answer for it.
Longo texted me. He's like, did the cardio equipment break at the PI or what? But a huge win for Stipe, and certainly don't want to take anything away from him. I guess I just felt like Ngannou, dude, I mean, you're sitting there getting ready for a 25-minute championship fight, and this Cameroonian destroyer, Kenny, after 3 minutes, he's done, I mean, he could have landed a punch over the final 20, but you kind of felt like the fight was over after 4 minutes. So it was a little bit anticlimactic, but big win for Stipe nonetheless. Third consecutive heavyweight title defense. No heavyweight had done that previously. Perhaps Cain Velasquez will be next. We talked a lot about a win over Ngannou being a great way to stamp this heavyweight reign, but Kenny, right, few wins would do more, I would think, for Stipe than to take out a guy in cardio, Cain Velasquez, who most people, I think, believe is right there in that discussion with Stipe as the greatest UFC heavyweight ever.
Without a doubt, dude. And I think that right now, based on what Stipe has done, he has established himself as the best heavyweight so far. When you go out and beat a guy like Cain Velasquez, that's it. The discussion is over. The discussion would be over. If he goes out there and beats Cain Velasquez, you got to have him as the best heavyweight of all time. And you look at his skills and what he's done, the competition, and it's unbelievable what Stipe has done.
And it's an amazing team with Marcus Marinelli and everybody else, and you just feel happy for these people. We get to know them, and you feel really happy for Stipe and his pregnant wife, Ryan, and everybody else. Very curious to see how it did on pay-per-view and how much maybe a guy like Francis Ngannou in a relatively short amount of time was able to produce a significant number. I think Cormier has become a top 3 pay-per-view draw in this company while Ronda has stepped aside, but he hasn't necessarily produced a big number without John Jones. The reason I bring it up is for Francis Ngannou, I think he should say, look, give me a 3-rounder as a co-main event on pay-per-view, right? Like you could headline Ngannou into Black Beast, throw him on FS1, throw him on 5. I mean, there's some huge fights that I would love to see. But don't you think for Ngannou, you kind of avoid a 5-rounder here at all costs? Like, just give me a 3-round contract.
Not against a wrestler. You don't. Don't put him in against a wrestler in a 5-round fight.
Yeah. All right, well, we'll see what's next for those guys. All right, but now joining us as we continue the UFC 220 recap, another of the big winners